Today I'll be continuing with my scheduled discussion and point spread prediction videos. Today I'll be doing Washington State. So Washington State wasn't very good last year. They missed a bowl game and finished 5-7 and only got two conference wins. And they've usually in the past been a pretty solid team in the Pac-12, but last year their defense wasn't very good, giving up over 28 points per game on average, and their offense was very one-dimensional. They were one of the best passing teams in the country. They were fourth in the country in passing yards per game, but they were one of the worst rushing teams in the country. They finished 130 in rushing yards per game at only 85. They were almost as bad of a running team as Colorado was. Uh, and now their really good quarterback has transferred out, so I don't think they're going to be as good this year, even as they were last year. I think they're going to be terrible. And the good news, though, for them is with this schedule being so easy, their record should be better than last year still. So, like with Oregon State, Washington State will be an independent this year, and they've made a deal with the Mountain West Conference to play at least six of their teams in the season, and they're playing eight of the Mountain West teams this year, and only three teams from the Power Four, and uh, they also get an FCS opponent. The FCS opponent is Portland State, the opener, which that will be a for sure win for Washington State. And then their Mountain West opponents are San Jose State, Boise State, Fresno State, Hawaii, San Diego State, Utah State, New Mexico, and Wyoming. And then uh, Texas Tech, uh, that game will be really tough, but it's nice that they get that one at home. And I'm not high at all on Texas Tech this year. I don't think they're going to be very good. Uh, their roster isn't that good, and they weren't that good last year either. But I think Texas Tech's roster is still a little better than Washington State's is. So right now, I'd call that a 50-50 game, in my opinion. And then the other two Power Four opponents are uh, what were conference games. Their rival Washington next on the road. So I think Washington State has a good chance to beat Washington this year because they almost beat them last year. And Washington was so good last year. That game went down to the final second, and Washington won by 3 points. And Washington, I'm not high at all on them this year. I don't think they have much of a chance to be a top 25 team. But I still think that Washington's roster is better than Washington State's, and that is still a pretty tough place to play at Washington. Uh, and Oregon State, being the other Power Four opponent uh, on the road, so uh, they'll have a good chance to win that one. Of course, it would have been nice to have gotten that one at home, uh, but that's really a 50-50 game, in my opinion. Oregon State is a almost completely different team this year, losing their coach and 20 starters from last season. I don't think they'll be very good either. Uh, and then uh, their first week off comes at a good time in between road games against Boise State and Fresno State. I don't know near as much about the group of five football teams as I do the Power Five, but I do know that Boise State and Fresno State are two of the best non-Power Five teams, and it's going to be tough for Washington State to beat them uh, because they're teams that can usually beat those really bad Power Five teams. Mm, and the second week off could have come at a better time. It comes in between San Diego State and Utah State. Would have been better to have gotten the other week off in between that uh, two games in a row against Texas Tech and Washington. But of the other six Mountain West opponents, I think Washington State should be able to win at least five of them. Uh, Wyoming will be tough, I think. They actually beat Texas Tech last year, so that's why I say that. But none of those other teams on there are very good, usually. So now I'll move on to the point spread prediction. So games in the green are games where I think Washington State will be favored to win by a blowout, 20 or more points, and there's one of those Portland State games in the black or toss-up games, mm, and that means that there won't be a favorite. At least you wouldn't think so at this time. And there's one of those Texas Tech um, and games in the purple are games where I think that uh, Washington State will be favored to win by about a touchdown at 6 to 9 points, and there's three of those: San Jose State, San Diego State, and Wyoming. Games in the uh, yellow are games where I think Washington State will be an underdog by about a touchdown, 6 to 9 points, and there's one of those Washington games in the gray are games where I think Washington State will be an underdog by about a field goal, 1 to 5 points, and there's three of those: Boise State, Oregon State, and Fresno State. And games in the blue are games where I think Washington State will be a double-digit favorite, 10 to 19 points, and there's actually three of those. I forgot to put the New Mexico game in the blue, but Hawaii, Utah State, and New Mexico are all games in that spread. Uh, so Portland State, Washington State should be favored in that one by like 30 points or a little bit more. Um, and Texas Tech, I have that as a toss up because Washington State does get the game at home, and of course, home field advantage does matter in college football. But I would have Texas Tech as a small favorite if it was at Texas Tech or even if it was a neutral game. Uh, and Washington, I think they'll be favored over Washington State by about 6 points. But I do think that would be a gray game if Washington State had it at home, and it wouldn't be shocking if it was still a gray game anyway. Uh, and Oregon State, I think they'll probably be favored by a point or two because it's at Oregon State. Washington State, I'm pretty sure, would be favored at home. And then Boise State and Fresno State, I think they'll both be favored by about 3 points in those games. I think, though, those would be close to a toss up, or maybe even Washington State would be a small favorite if the games were at Washington State. Uh, and San Jose State uh, and uh, Wyoming and San Diego State. I think the spread in all of those will probably be around 7 points. San Diego State would probably make the blue if it was a home game. Uh, and Wyoming, I just have that in the purple because they are supposed to be better than Wyoming, even though I'm not so sure that Washington State will be better than Wyoming this year. Uh, and Hawaii. Utah State and New Mexico. The spread in all of those should be close to 20 points. Maybe like 18 or 19 for Hawaii and Utah State, and then maybe like 17 for New Mexico because that's a road game. But they should have no problem making a bowl game this year, even with a bad team, because they're going to be favored in at least 7 games, and uh, I don't see them losing any more than 5 of those. And really, Washington State is going to have to join a conference very soon if they want to have a chance to ever make the 12-team playoff. Because even if they went 12-0 with this schedule, which it's not like it would be impossible for them to do because it's so easy, they still would have no chance to make the college football playoff because schedule matters a lot with that. Uh, but that will be it with this video. Please subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll be back soon.